So for the nouns, the articles, and the adjectives, one of the main things that you have to do, I think that is the best thing to do, which I do put in your Canvas course, is that you should really take your textbook, whichever textbook that you're using, and you should read it and over again, almost as if you were a student. There's never enough studying that you can do. However, having said that, I also want to tell you that there aren't that many rules or that many complications when you teach Spanish, especially at a basic level, that you will find yourself scared in class that you won't be able to explain why this verb goes here, why do we use this word here and there. And I give you also little funny tips, as in like when you're stuck in your class, what should you say if a student asks you something really difficult. One of my funniest tricks is that if you feel stage fright and you feel that you don't know what to say, because at that moment sometimes you know the answer but you freeze because you're tired or whatever, one of the things you can do to buy time and to take it a little bit of 5 minutes to relax is to say to the class, okay, that's a very good question. Who knows the answer to that question? Time to breathe. B, you might be lucky that the smarty pants in the class will answer your question and then you can elaborate on it. It will refresh your memory. It's kind of like an acting trick that you are buying time, you're breathing, you're relaxing, because sometimes, well, not sometimes, all the time, when you're teaching, you are on stage and people are watching you and listening to you, and they believe that you know 100% everything about Spanish. And that is the biggest fear that I have in my classes, for the master's degree in education, which is that the students say, yes, I speak Spanish really well. Yes, I know almost all the rules, but there's always something that they ask me if a student is really intelligent that I do not know how to explain. So we'll cover some of those issues and have a little laughs about how to manage it and get out of it, sort of like an actor, okay, improv / teacher class, okay? So let's move on to the first subject, which is the nouns. Okay, the nouns have gender, as you know, masculine and feminine. And the basic thing that you always have to tell them is that they have the textbook. You will have the textbook that will teach them. And you will tell them that the ones that end with O and are masculine, the ones that end with A are feminine. Most of the time, that's the basic rule. However, we have many other exceptions or sort of general rules about which ones are feminine and which ones are masculine. For instance, the ones that end with al and or ente and ante, like for example, animal, hospital, color, accidente, presente, diamante, all of those are masculine, okay? Then you have to remember that the exceptions will come, and this is where their hair will stand, and they will say, oh my God, you gave me this rule, and now you're giving me a contradiction, and I have to learn the exceptions. I always tell them you have to make your own lists, and you have to remember these are the nice ones that are actually pleasant because they follow the rules, and these are the not nice ones or difficult or unpleasant that do not follow the rules, just like in English. Any language has that, and other languages are way more complicated than ours. So for instance, one of the examples of the exceptions to the rule is mano, hand, la mano, which ends with O and it's actually feminine. La catedral, la señal, la labor, la flor, okay, so not all the ones that end with or are, I'm mixing English and Spanish, are masculine, because it's la flor, la labor, but el color. And then in ente, we have la serpiente, la corriente, la gente, the most popular one, the people, la gente. And then here's when they start panicking a little bit, and they just want to know how to learn this. And another thing, and I told you about the lists, and you can, we're not going to talk about so much about methodology and how you're going to teach it. You can use your own creativity. You can do flashcards, pictures, websites, movies. You can do the audio method. You can do the grammar method. You can stress on writing. You can stress on listening songs. There's all kinds of methods. They all work. Every person is different. Every teacher is different. And I think that everybody should apply whatever works best for them. And each school and university should have different teachers who teach in different methods, so the students get the most of what we know. God forbid we only had one method. Therefore, the next question is, why does this happen? That's what they ask you very, very often. Why? If English doesn't have gender for glasses, lamp, or couch, or chair, or jacket, why does Spanish do that? And the only way to avoid such a complicated question, which is linguistics and etymology and where the words come from, etc., is because Spanish, like French, Italian, and Portuguese, etc., is a Romance language that comes from Latin. And first of all, once you use the word Latin, they don't say anything else because it sounds like algebra. It sounds scary. So it's the truth. It comes from Latin, and that's why we have gender in the words that are not people or animals. Then which ones are feminine? Usually the ones that end with A, of course, that's the most typical one, like entrevista, cara, etc. And the ones that end with yon and umbre. For example, la costumbre, la incertidumbre, la canción, la ilusión, just to give you some examples. So that comes in quite easily. And then there's the ones that end with ie, with only D, and with Z. With Z, la luz, la paz, la rapidez. With D, amistad, ciudad, actitud. As you can see, they are mostly the ones that end with that, not only with D, but that and dud. Now, then usually books show you exceptions, okay? And again, you just have to emphasize there's two ways of doing that. Well, there are many ways of doing it, but you can show them the regular rule and exception, 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 or teach them the regular rule, all of it, all the nicey nice, and then go to the exceptions later, so they'll get depressed later on, okay? So you choose whichever you want. And now the last one, and not least, is an easy one, which is the ones that don't change, even if they have gender. Now, remember in English we have these words that end with ist, like journalist, receptionist. Okay, those in Spanish end with ista, as you know. And you have to tell them, of course, that those don't change. Now, the reason, or the fact that they don't change the ending, so you say la periodista and el periodista, doesn't mean that they don't change in gender. They change in gender. Periodista is for a man and for a woman. But the fact is that ista, does not change in form. It stays in ista. So therefore, if they're talking about a man, they will not use isto, and they will not say el periodisto. And that's where they get confused, and they usually do that because you just taught them to change the A to an O, right? You will change the article, remind them of that. So you will keep that ista, la periodista, but for a guy you will say el periodista, and the same with turista and etc. Then you also have the ones that are called neutral, that end with e or ente mostly, estudiante, el estudiante, la estudiante, and that e will not change. Okay. If they ask you whether there are many, no, there aren't many, but if they ask you, do they all all the words in Spanish have gender and they follow these rules? No, there are exceptions. Do some of them don't change the ending, they keep the same ending, but they change the article because they all intrinsically have gender? Yes. Okay, so that will be it for the nouns. And then I'll continue with the next videos, so we'll make short videos. And the next lecture will be about the articles that go with these nouns.